And thank you very much for staying with us here on PM Express. As you see, there is a debate that is brewing, but the debate that should have happened 6 or 7 months ago, because apparently it came up on the floor of Parliament. But I'm not surprised that we didn't hear too much about it until now, because when the parliamentarians are approving the emolument for the executive, it is a closed-door session. They call it the Committee of the Whole. They lock the doors. All 275 come inside, they lock the doors, no camera, nothing. They put up in the CCTV, and then they approve it. And so we didn't hear about it. Just when the president wrote down to the finance ministry to say, make the payments, then of course we got wind of this and it's become a big deal. Tonight there's even a case going to the Supreme Court because of this. And so is the salaries now for first and second ladies. We are asking the question whether it's justified. We'll get to the bottom of that. Let's break it down for you. We know that what it is now, there's instruction for payment of allowances to spouses of the president and the vice presidents. We've been getting some details from the information minister. He granted an interview to the Daily Graphic newspaper where we picked up a few of the explanations for this. According to him, the allowance payments were instituted under the Kufuor administration, right? And that were only being formalized by the current government. And so this, he believes, or actually asserts, is something that by convention has happened over the years. But they wanted to formalize it, right? Put it into law. Remember, Parliament has passed it. But that's even a very controversial bit about the legal side of this. It's the legal brains that have very divergent opinion from what the government is expressing on this. The information minister still maintains that all surviving spouses of heads of state, current and former, have always received the salaries. And this includes, he says, Lordina Mahama, the wife of the former President John Mahama. Now, Nadu Mills, the wife of the late President Mills, also, he says, earns it. Matilda Mesa Arthur, wife of the former, late former Vice President, also earns it. And then Anakuda Juman Rawlings also earns it, he explains. Now, the point about this is tonight the NDC's youth wing, they have issued a statement on this, and they say they are going to go to the Supreme Court because they believe this is reprehensible. And so it brings up the question, but if Lordina Mahama is still taking amounts of money, Nadu Mills is also, and Matilda Mr. Arthur, is it a case of double standard or hypocrisy? We'll ask that question because the NDC's youth wing will join us to explain. We'll put that question to them. Now, again, the information minister gives us more. He says the emoluments committee recommended that the arrangement for the spouses be made formal. The Constitution says at intervals of, say, 4 years, the president will have to set up a committee, and that committee will then look into the emolument for Article 71 office holders, and that is a tawny bit, and make recommendations. So in the process of doing that, for constitutionally recognized Article 71 office holders, they then decide that let's formalize this and let's make a recommendation. The president accepts it, as of course we've seen now, and says Parliament consider to approve, and Parliament did approve. And so that's the information minister's point of view. But we've had, as I said, legal brains opine on this. Well, this is H. Kwesi Prempeh. He is the head of CDD, Center for Democratic Development. He's a lawyer, he's a professor, of course, and a lawyer at that. And he holds a view clearly that the emoluments committee is limited to recommending salaries and other benefits and privileges of only Article 71 office holders. They lack the power to do what they've done. Has no authority, says, to recommend payments of any allowances or emoluments to first or second spouses. That's his legal opinion on this from the Constitution. He says the political class, and this is him making a direct point to the political class, executive directly, and of course Parliament, that by omission, conspired to this to pass this, cannot use the Article 71 process to smuggle salaries or allowances for first and second spouses, he maintains. But tonight there have been some strong defense from the majority side of the House. And remember that it came before the House. They knew what they were approving. This is Patrick Boama. He is the deputy chair of the Finance Committee in Parliament, and they would have considered it because it's a finance issue. He says that it's justified and the payments of the allowance should be made, and that, in fact, the words he used are, he considers the First Lady and the Second Lady, they do a lot of work, and so they must be rewarded for what they've done. He talks about traveling to the UN conferences, etc., and in that promotes Ghana, etc. I mean, it's okay. Soft power, pay them for it. That's his argument. So for those of you wondering, when Professor Kwesi talks about Article 71 office holders and that they properly defined, spouses don't come into that category. Let me just quickly break down for you what the Constitution says, who these Article 71 office holders are. So at the top there is the President. Then you have the Vice President. Then you have the Speaker of Parliament. Then you have the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Chief Justice and the Justice of the Supreme Court, and of course other judges, and then the MPs. The rest are ministers of state, political appointees, public servants with salaries charged to the consolidated fund but enjoying special constitutional privileges. Now, one of the things you need to note about what we are talking about is that the office of the First Ladies, it's not one that, strictly speaking, comes under Article 71 because the Constitution doesn't mention them as such. So you cannot say they are part of the Article 71 office holders. But most importantly, bear in mind, this approval by Parliament takes with retrospective effect 4 years back. And whatever they are going to earn, the First Ladies, is going to calculate it from the 2017. And what we know is that amount is certainly beyond 20,000 cedis a month. So make the calculations yourself. This is a huge amount you're going to be paying them for. Now, the Vice President was awarded, and this is just to give you some historical context to how we got here. Because there's a committee that was set up, and they, decided to put forward what they call a point system for the calculation of salaries of the President. The President was at 100%, and so the Vice President get 90% of the President's amount, and then it cascades down. MPs awarded 50%, but there's an interesting thing that happened. The MPs came to fight. They kicked against the 50%. They said increase it. When it went up to 60%, they came and fought and said, give me 60% of what the President is earning, not 50%. So they increased it. And so we have this situation where MPs, again, kicked against the recommended 10%. As I've said, instead they demanded a full annual 20% increment every year. Every year, give us a 20% increment of 10% that was originally proposed. The key question to ask is, when the executive, the legislature fight for salaries, what happens to the ordinary man? And you have to put this in the broader context, which is where a lot of people are looking at. We're going to be having a conversation with people who know what we are talking about and know the issues. Franklin Cudjoe, good friend of mine, long time having seen, he's joining me in studio. We're speaking to two members of Parliament who obviously were part of the consideration, also join us on this. And then we'll hear why the NDC wants to go to the Supreme Court. Stay with me. And thank you very much for staying with us here on PM Express. My guest in the studio is Franklin Cudjoe, as founding president of Emani Africa. My partner in crime during the elections. We did a lot together. I'm happy to have you here, Franklin. Same here. Been a while. Yes. Also joining us via Zoom tonight is Kwaku Quartey. He's a former deputy finance minister. MP for Boase West and the Finance Committee chairman. And I'm happy that he joins us on Zoom. Hello, Kwaku. Kwaku. Hello, Kwaku. I think you may have to unmute. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Fantastic. Good to have you. Long time no see.
Yeah, good to be here too. It's been quite some time.
Yes, it has been. And your colleague, Roxing Nelson Dafiamekbo, is also joining us tonight. And he, of course, will join us shortly via phone. He is MP for South Dai, and he is, of course, member of the Legal Constitutional Committee in Parliament. And will be joined shortly also by remember that the NDC says they're going to go to court, the Supreme Court on this. And the youth wing specifically. So the National Youth Organizer will join us very briefly, just to explain to us why they believe the court should hear this. But let me start with you, Mr. Quartey, also because you were the Deputy Finance Minister I believe at the time this was approved by Parliament. And now you are also the chair of the Finance Committee. Explain to me, and I guess the listeners who are asking all these questions today, what the justification was, the rationale was for the decision to put the First Lady and the Second Ladies on an official salary that we know now will be backdated.
Well, thank you. To speak of the rationale, I can only say, as has already been indicated by the Information Minister, that this was more about regularizing a practice that has existed for so long. So I guess the rationale just might have been regularization, that instead of having the state make this commitment outside the books, it is important that we codify it so it is clear. And I am happy the kind of discussion that this has given rise to, that people are even considering going to court for the court to determine whether or not this is something as a country we should be doing. I guess if they do so and the court so determines, then we will be bound by whatever the courts would say, whether we want to write it down or, as we have done in the past, we want to keep it under the table. But I have to indicate that before this program, I looked a bit across the world to see what general practice is, and it would appear that in many countries, the First Lady and the wives of top officials of state do not really get paid. It is a practice that we seem to have had in Ghana for a long time, and maybe this is the time to look at it and to see whether we want to continue with this practice.
Okay. So what's your reaction to that? I mean, I'll come to you, Kweku, for an expansion on the thought. He agrees, it looks across the globe, this is not something that many countries do. And if you can check the US and other countries that are more wealthy than us, they're not paying their first ladies, pretty ceremonial roles. But he gives us the justification there, which is echoing the Information Minister saying, well, this is something that we've always done in a way. So why don't you now make it formal, get Parliament to approve?
Well, a part of this conversation is quite unnerving. If you don't take care, you come across as a sexist or chauvinist. If you don't take care, you come across as not valuing the work of women. Truth be told, these women typically would have left some decent, pretty paying jobs in order to become spouses or to become first and second ladies. So somehow there's the thinking that they ought to be compensated. Where I stand is that yes, if they ought to be compensated for work done, then let's know exactly what work they do. Give us some terms of reference. I mean, you have your schedule of work as you work here, and for reasons for which you are being paid. To just explain it away that it's been done in the past, or somehow because they are spouses and they do important work, they should be paid as regular cabinet ministers. It's just not done. Cabinet ministers have scheduled roles that they play. We need to know exactly what roles they perform. Don't tell me they accompany the president, they do visitations and what have you. Yes, that could as well be part of some voluntary private sector related jobs. If we are deciding that we want to pay first ladies, then let's give them specific rules and let's do it properly, as HK Prempeh has suggested. I come by way of a bill. But I'll go further by asking, what exactly would they be doing? Because you see, it's also not good to downplay the role that, whether it's ceremonial or not. At least there's some time they are spending. They may as well be doing things that may not be beneficial to the state. The fact that I see them as functions doesn't mean that they are necessarily doing things that will inure to my benefit and so my taxes should pay them. So let's get specific rules for them. Let's not explain it away by simply saying it's been done in the past, for which there were no specific rules that can only then be equated to the levels of cabinet ministers. Because cabinet ministers do have work they do. That's why they go to cabinet and report. Will the first and second lady be reporting as well? So it's good not to come across as being cold-hearted, that you don't value the work of women. That's not what this conversation is about. And before we get to that level of emotionalizing the conversation and becoming sentimental, I think we should deal with the issues and the facts. Let's give them proper rules. So that committee
Do I hear you say, is there a suggestion there that you are pay them so far as you can tie them to some specific rules?
Well, if the argument is being made that they are supposed to be given the same level of emoluments as cabinet ministers or Article 71 holders, my argument is that yes, well, they've come by, they've come into some sort of a job. We might as well give them specific duties to perform, because all these cabinet level ministers have duties. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I mean, look, this is Ghana.
But do
There's
they
no way
deserve to be paid salary? I guess that's the basic.
as long as some work will be fashioned out for them, for which we would have to discuss, then they should be given some emolument. Already they receive allowances, don't they? I don't know the quantum though. But for me, I think if you want to receive a salary, you must have worked for it. It's not simply because you are a spouse, right? So you must have worked for it. So if you are going to move there, the committee should have asked for specific terms of reference to be given them to specifically lay out the duties of the spouses. That's what if I were a member of that committee, that's what I would have asked, and not to be just rubber stamp and say, okay, because they should also be given the same levels of payment just as cabinet ministers. I think that's where the committee failed at. They should have asked for specific, or they could have even recommended what work they should do. And in the eyes of every Ghanaian, they say, okay, they do A, B, C, D. Yeah. Don't tell me they have a foundation. That's not, I'm not saying that's not work officially recognized by the state, and for which they should receive salary. So I'm in the middle in a way.
Yeah, let me bring in Roxing. Do I have Roxing with me on the line? Roxing Defemepo?
Yes, I'm here.
Roxing, so I want to go back to the basics, and I heard your other colleague and, of course, chairman of the Finance Committee, Kuku Kwate, make the point about retreating the information minister's, of course, explanation why this has happened. But fundamentally, you approved it. It came before Parliament, you approved it. You must have had a reason why you approved it.
Evans, good evening. Good evening to this PM Express, right?
Yes, PM Express.
So good evening to your viewers and good evening to Kwaku Kwate and Frank. Look, we are missing the issue. Fundamentally speaking, the relationship between the president and the wife or the spouse is governed by the Matrimonial Causes Act in this country. It's one of marriage, properly recognized in law. If there are any benefits attendant upon the marriage, there's a law that defines it. Now, leaving that aside, what was the mandate of the Professor Yaw Ntiamoa Badu Committee? Do you have a copy of the terms of reference appointing the committee to look into?
I guess I'm guessing taken from the Constitution that they should.
Yes, even. So people are being emotional, like frankly rightly said. We don't have to emotionalize the arguments and the debate. Let us interrogate the mandate of the committee. The mandate was to review the emoluments and other benefits attendant upon Article 71 of its holders. So if you smuggled anything into the said report and brings to Parliament, and Parliament, certain members of Parliament, let me put for want of a better expression, it is not as if the record doesn't reflect that the minority raised issues. We raise issues, particularly the chief whip of the minority caucus raised issues. And he got support from one or two members of the majority side at the time. But as it is the practice in Parliament, a resolution was passed and our position was subdued. What do you expect? Now the media is asking the NDC members why we did not make noise enough. That is not the point. The point is that at the time that we approve of the recommendations, including the one that has tickled the sensation of the nation, it remained merely a recommendation until the president has his clear intention to carry it out. That is when, for instance, going to court would have crystallized, because your course of action would have crystallized because the president now has taken concrete steps to give effect.
But Baroque Singh, the counter argument is there's a reason why the Constitution lays out a procedure that says for that recommendation, even if accepted by the president, to become effective, it needs parliamentary approval.
Exactly.
And so once you approved it, fait accompli.
No, let me say this. Parliamentary approval is procedural. And we know that very often Parliament can approve things that would turn out to constitute an illegality. You were in this country when the media board crafted the PDA's agreement and submitted to Parliament by government. We approved of it. But today, a court of competent jurisdiction is saying that it was abrogated on grounds of law and properly so called. So even though parliamentary debates and other things may have flagged some of the recommendations in the report, if you don't garner enough support, you are overwhelmed by the majority decision. And once the majority takes the decision, it becomes the decision of Parliament. So you are obliged. But you cannot be running to court to have that thing shut down, because if the president does not give effect to it, then you do not have a course of action. So the course of action has crystallized now because the president has taken concrete steps to give effect to what Parliament supposedly has done. It's an illegality, it's an unconstitutionality.
Did this come down to a vote on the floor when the committee of the whole sat on this?
It did. It did. Because
did the minority side vote for it?
Let me tell you what happened. When the minority chief will flag the matter and make very expansive comments and statements on the issue, the majority side rejected our argument. And so it had to be put to a voice vote. And when it was put to a voice vote, we were defeated. I agree that we were defeated. But the records will bear us out that the Honorable Muntaka raised the issue, we were defeated on it. The argument of the media today is that why didn't we, after that, make vociferous comments and noise? But you cannot be making noise if the president has not given effect to what Parliament supposedly had approved. But now that has been done, we can now raise the issue that we opposed it on the floor. We got defeated by parliamentary procedural steps. So the next remediable step available to us is to test the meaning of Article 71's office holders at the Supreme Court.
Because tonight there's a statement that came in detail. That action is going to happen from the NDC Youth Wing. The National Youth Organizer, Mr. Parado, joins us briefly on this action. Mr. Parado, thanks for joining us.
In fact, I am issuing a writ tomorrow. My writ is ready. I am just hearing that the NDC Youth Wing is also waiting in this matter. But of course, the matters can be consolidated if they eventually file. But I'm filing tomorrow morning.
Okay. I mean, even before I bring it up, because that is an interesting development. I didn't know that. So what you're saying, you're filing a writ tomorrow to do exactly what?
To seek a proper interpretation of Article 71 office holders and the emoluments attendant upon that. Whether or not within the meaning ascribed to Article 71 office holders, any committee can import other entities and persons into the meaning of those office holders suggests that emoluments by way of monthly wages be paid to those people, even though the Constitution does not contemplate them.
Okay. Let me bring Mr. Parado down on the back of this revelation. Mr. Parado, so that's your member of parliament. He says tomorrow he's filing the writ at the Supreme Court. You issued a statement tonight saying you will head to the same to the same forum. Will you back that and abandon yours? Or how will that play out now?
We can always consolidate the action. And I'm happy to hear that our member of parliament is going to go to the Supreme Court to seek a proper interpretation of Article 71. They are the same action we're going to take. Article 2.1 says that any law that is inconsistent, the best forum to go to is the Supreme Court. So if the member of parliament is going to go, we'll also be coming. And I'm sure that the court will consolidate the actions and then bring finality to the matter. For my reading and understanding of the wording of Article 71, there is no ambiguity. So I am surprised that a committee mandated to review emoluments of Article 71 of this order will end up smuggling in people who are not on that list. It still beats my understanding. And how the president will even assent to this and allow this to happen is a bit sad. If you understand the economic conditions under which we find ourselves, when we are all being asked to tighten our belts, others are busy losing their so that they and their family members can enjoy the loot from the country. It's unfortunate. And for young people who can't find jobs, for young people who are struggling every day to even put meals on the tables for their family, for young people who don't even know when the next paycheck is coming from, to hear some of this is happening. That is why we have decided as the youth wing of the MPs, the biggest opposition party, will be speaking for many young people and asking the court to do this country a lot of good by telling us whether the mandate of the committee, whether the committee exceeded its mandate or they acted within their mandate. I personally believe they went out of their mandate because their job was to review emoluments of Article 71 of the order. And even that, if the president wants to do anything contrary to that, there is a procedure. He should take a bill under Article 108. He should take a bill before Parliament. There was an expenditure that is going to be charged into the consolidated fund. And once that is done, the people, when I say the people, are members of Parliament, can debate the issues appropriately. And then at that juncture, if they agree that spouses of the first and the president and then the second lady should be given some salary like they are claiming, then that will be fair. But as it stands now, I believe it's a breach. It's a slap on the face of the Constitution.
But here's the question, though, Mr. Parado. We've learned tonight from that Madame Lordina Mahama, Madame and Mr. Arthur, all of them were on allowances when they were First Lady and Second Ladies, respectively. Nothing has changed apart from regularizing it. And so, is there double standards there in the approach?
Ivan, a lot changes. When you talk about emolument, it affects ex gratia as well. When they review, it's consolidated. Back pays are brought on board. So a lot of things. The conditions are not the same. We all know that in every budgetary allocation, provisions are made for the office of the First Lady and then the Second Lady. That is okay. When they travel on international duties with the president and are given per diem, those are fine. But immediately you institutionalize it and then you say that going forward they are going to be paid salary under Article 71. If they are going to be paid under any other law, all we are saying is that if you want to do this, then do it well. But you cannot put them under Article 71 because the wording under Article 71, there is no ambiguity. The wording is very clear, and that is what we emphasize. I believe that Article 2.1 of the Constitution is being breached because if you want to do anything under Article 71, that group, the First Lady, the Second Lady, they don't qualify under Article 71. What are their terms of reference? What job do they do for the state? How do you measure their performance? How do you measure their output? Everybody under Article 71 has a terms of engagement. And we know your schedule. We know what you are doing. What are the schedules of the First and Second Lady? But you see, we should first understand the mandate that was given to the Professor Yarin Chairman Baby Committee. I believe they exceeded their mandate. I believe they did not have the power to do what they did. I believe their acts constitute an unconstitutionality, and I believe that what they've done is a breach and a slap on the face of the Constitution. That is why we are going to head to court. And I'm very happy this evening that a member of the minority caucus in Parliament We're issuing a rate tomorrow. Our rates will also be coming maybe the day after tomorrow. But whatever it takes, we are going to go to court and make sure we are going to invoke the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, give us the true and proper interpretation of Article 71, and whether or not the Professor Yai Intiamwa Baby Committee could have gone ahead to add the first lady and then the second lady.
Mr. Prado, thank you very much. Frankly, what your reaction to this development? So this is going to go to court tomorrow, right for him to pursue this?
Well, I guess it's right to do so. It's very important. I mean, what is even more worrying is that this is supposed to take retroactive effect.
Yes.
In 2017.
Yes.
I don't know why that would be the case.
Yes.
Because they are talking huge sums here, right?
Huge sums. But it has been reviewed.
And they are receiving.
Yes.
So they are receiving the sums for what exactly?
Yeah.
That's my contention. That what exact work are they receiving the sums for?
Yeah.
You know, that has not been clarified, and I wish that could also be part of the
of the suit.
The suit, because it's very important to determine these things.
The Parliament failed here because Parliament could have demanded the questions you were asking. Okay, so even if they objected to it, what were the grounds of objection? Why, for example, the issues that you raised, Parliament could have demanded, okay, we probably will back it, but what are we paying them for?
That was obviously the basic requirement in all these conversations. But as you know, you just, before the program, you were telling us the spar that almost existed between the Parliament and the Executive, that if we're not going to increase our cut, then they'll get them during the presentation of bills and what have you. But this was a basic test, and I think Parliament could still recall this conversation and then say, let's give some specific terms of reference. Actually blame the committee itself that recommended this in the first place. Because committee of experts should have, at least at the basic minimum, requested that, look, we're going to do this, we may do it, but we need to be justified so that it doesn't become a laughing stock, really, because now the whole work they did is being poo-pooed. Otherwise, who does this? Who gives money for basically no work done? We need to know that. And for them to even recommend that they should take retroactive effect, it's a complete no-no. I mean, I think they failed us, really. So my position is simple. Whether elected or not, if you feel they are performing certain functions and they're going to perform vital functions, let's codify those functions and make sure that we know that they are being paid for specific functions, not just because they exist as spouses.
Yeah, and then also, obviously, if it's Article 71, then everything else that the Constitution says, Article 71 office holders, the accountability mechanisms that they must comply.
Well,
for example, asset declaration. I saw HPC Prempe make that point.
Well, it goes on and on. It has to be done. And even more so is the fact that, you know, you made the point, let's not make it look as if they did not receive anything at all. They receive allowances.
Yes.
Allowances, we do not particularly know the quantums as well.
Yes.
We need to know all of those. So you're right. Once we're going to treat them as Article 71 holders, and if indeed we give them specific terms of reference, then they must obviously yield to all accountability tools as well.
I mean, I want to expand this a bit more because you can also multiply it, and frankly, I'm happy you were here, and talk about this, the cost, the burden of running a government, the cost of government machinery.
See, my problem with I'm worried that this is going to take retroactive effect because this is not the time for the president to be approving this kind
That is a big
sums.
question, isn't it?
Because you see, you've asked us to gather up our loins, and everybody knows we are in a COVID situation, and the economy has been impaired. Even if you wanted to bulldoze this across, please, for God's sake, it should not take retrospective effect on 2017. And it feels as if you're actually just poking your fingers in our eyes, really. That's the way it feels. So the first conversation about the legitimacy of the claim itself has not been, obviously, we've not gone over that, in spite of the fact that the Parliament has approved, in the words of my good friend Honorable Dafame, for an illegality, which needs to be corrected. You then do not, basically slap us again in the face by saying that, well, I'm going to do this, come what may, and I'm actually going to do it more by making sure that they receive these monies from 2017.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a bigger conversation.
We might as well just say that, well, they should be giving money from the time they got married.
Because, of course, I mean,
Because that's
let me quickly quality on this. So there's a bigger that Franklin just touched on that bit. So the burden on the taxpayer pretty huge, running a government, executive, legislature, and then this is the same week where just 2 days ago, Parliament also approved almost 30 million to buy cars for the MPs, right? You know, which an annual day every 4-year ritual. And then coming on the back of all that, I mean, this is the time when we are saying COVID hits economy. Ordinary Ghanaians are battling with all the taxes that Parliament had approved recently in the budget. There is Fix the Country protest that is ongoing. People are still very agitated about economic conditions. Is this a time to be doing all these, as Franklin has intimated, backdating payment for the First Ladies when we haven't settled the legality of it? Approving loans, you know, hefty amounts to buy vehicles for just the timing of it. Well, and you're a former deputy finance minister, chair of the finance committee. Finance is your area. Is it a prudent way to spend the taxpayers' money in a time of economic crisis?
Well, whenever I hear timing, I begin not to be sure whether we are worried about the very practice, or that the practice itself, it's okay, only you should do it at the time when perhaps people are in a happier mood and therefore will not complain. I'm almost always not sure when we talk of timing.
I think there's certainty on this one. Do it at the time when the economy is making enough so you can spend. So that if everybody else, I mean, your finance is basic, cut your code according to your...
No, he's actually saying we should not even do it in the first place.
Okay.
That's what he's saying.
Okay.
Let me move.
Yeah, please go.
But you see, if I'm listening to Mr. Franklin Cudjoe, it's not a discussion about the fiscal impact of what is going to be paid. And indeed, listening to my good friend Daffy Amarko and our youth
National Youth Organization NDCS.
They say they're going to court to determine whether payment under Article 71 for the first ladies and the second ladies are legal. Now, they may well go to court, and the way I read the Constitution, it will be very easy for the court to say, no, these are not Article 71 office holders as we speak, and therefore you are unable to pay them under this arrangement. That does not take the financial impact question away, because it is entirely possible to continue to, as we have done under previous governments, to continue to pay them under the table. How much are they being paid under the table? That would be a fiscal question. So my own feeling is that we should not mix the legality of what has happened with what I think is the concern of Ghanaians. Namely, do we want to pay our first lady and second ladies over the top of the table or under the table? I can easily imagine the people in my constituency saying, does it really matter? If you're going to have to pay them, then it is you, the Buklong people, who are interested in whether it is done under 71. For we ordinary people, public money is public money. And so if my good friends are going to go to court, I think it would also be helpful if they would like to test whether or not first ladies should be paid at all.
Mm. Because I was going to make the point that I bet your constituents will ask that question first. They'll first probably come to the first argument to say, don't pay them at all, because it's going to burden me further. Use that money to...
I don't know. And I hear Mr. Franklin Cudjoe correctly when he says, look, if at all as a country we want to deviate from what appears to be a worldwide practice, that we want, because of our culture, we want to assign roles to our first lady and second ladies and let them do something for the country, and we want to pay them, then let's do it properly. I think I can live with that. But look, I have sat in the Ministry of Finance, and there are several issues related to arrangements like that. We don't know whether you can sack a first lady because she has not performed the role she has been assigned per whatever arrangements you come up with, when that first lady is a fantastic wife and the president wants to continue marrying her. These are all matters that must go into whether or not we want to even assign our first ladies roles and whether we want to pay them. That, for me, is a far more important discussion than the issue of, because it has been regularized at a time when it has been done with a car loan for members of parliament, and it looks like you're poking us in the eye. We're going to court to see whether under Article 71 you can do this. Trust me, and where I have sat, I have seen many things. It is entirely possible that the court would determine that, no, 71, it was wrong. Article 71 cannot house what you have done. So take them out. And then what? Then we can now, the government can now donate buildings to former first ladies and buildings to former first ladies and give them allowances, and they are sick and you want to fly them outside. And then we would look back someday and say, what did we even do by going to court? What did we achieve? Nothing.
No, Mekweku, you raised some fantastic points I think I need to put to Roxy before I go further. Roxy, the and so what question has just been asked. So you go to court, you win, it's unconstitutional, and so what? The allowances still are paid. Hello, Roxy.
Yes, thank you very much. But the question is that any attempt to regularize what Nana Akufo-Addo seeks to do will lead to an absurdity. Because you see, when we speak of Article 71 office holders, the bracket does not contain only the president and the vice. It contains the Speaker of Parliament. Mm-hmm. What about his spouse or her spouse? It contains the Chief Justice. What about his spouse or her spouse? It contains members of Parliament, 275. What about their spouses? It contains the commissioner to the Electoral Commission. What about his spouse or her spouse? So, that is why the framers of the Constitution were very clear.
Yeah, but Roxy, the question I was asking
May
you.
I finish?
Yes,
May I finish?
It's not the legal question, but I want to ask the effect, the fiscal question.
No. I will allow you to ask that. So technically, the Professor Yain Tiamoa Bedu Committee acted utterly ultra vires its mandate. That's all. That's all we are saying. If government, if Nana Akufo-Addo thinks that this has been a long-standing practice of paying emoluments, some allowances to first ladies, ex-first ladies of ex-presidents, and so he wants to formalize it. He should bring the statute.
Okay.
He should do so through an enactment.
Yeah, I think we've explored that. Yes.
No,
so address that for me.
Kweku says that there is evidence that they are being paid under the table. I don't know.
Oh, but when he says under the table, it's the existence of the allowance system that has been there for a long time.
But allowances are permissible by government policy. For instance, Kweku's government is rolling out $1 million per constituency. It is not backed by any law. It's just by government policy. Nobody is fighting them on that.
Okay.
So, when another government comes...
So, Honorable, it means that discussion is a legal discussion rather than a fiscal discussion in which I think the ordinary Ghanaian would be more interested in.
Because, you see, we are governed by a country of law. Let us do things in accordance with law.
But Roxy, he makes a point there that, I mean, I also was going to make to you. I mean, if this is about legality, the real question for the ordinary Ghanaian is not about whether it's legal. It's about how you're using my taxpayers' funds. And so even if you win, you're still going to use the taxpayers' funds to pay her or pay them. What's the effect of that?
No. The government comes to Parliament always to justify why they take some executive policy decisions. For instance, if I spoke to Nana Akufo-Addo this morning, and he explains to me that sometime in in 1999 and 2000, President Rawlings took a decision, and with parliamentary approval, they paid as far back into time as
Nkrumah's time, yes.
They paid the president's mother at the time.
Exactly, and he said that the president was in the meeting
Hold on.
Yes.
Hold on. They paid Buzier's wife. They paid the wives of the ex-generals who were heads of state.
Yes.
They paid Liman's wife. And so it was President Kufuor who disengaged in that exercise for some reason. That is why when President Mills came, he continued with the exercise and continued to pay. But those are executive decisions, defendable. But if you want to do so in accordance with law, come to Parliament with the bill. Let's debate the merits of the bill. Who shall pass the law?
Okay.
But until that is done, don't smuggle through the window.
Okay, so Roxanne, just for clarity, and this very brief yes or no. So you are not opposed to first ladies and second ladies receiving state funds for their office?
No, because if you want to give them state funds on the record,
that's the real question.
No, hold on. If you want to give them state funds, now I have no evidence that they are giving state funds. The government can do so with a policy that, for the sake of some policy, I want to give money to ex-wives of ex-presidents. That's fine. Come and justify it.
Okay.
But if you want to do so through an Article 77 Emoluments Review Committee, it is unconstitutional. That's all we are saying.
Franklin, interesting points there. I mean, so I think this is cleared up.
Well, the issues about the law is settled. I mean, the procedural issues are settled.
Yeah.
I guess the question is about obviously the sums involved, and indeed the specific duties that they would be performing.
Yeah.
But did you know that chiefs and queen mothers receive monthly allowances on the state? Did you know?
I didn't know.
You did not know?
No, I have no idea.
Well, it used to be 350 cedis, I think from 2017.
All queen mothers?
Well, I think the paramounts, there are levels. But the question is, should they be paid in the first place? So the state has become this great fiction at which everybody lives at everyone's expense, as Bastia said. So clear procedure issues must be dealt with. I'm in the middle, and I'm saying that if we have to regularize this, let's give them specific duties. The question about whether if they did not perform, the president can sack them, does not arise. I think they will perform their functions with glee.
But what about the bigger point about just the cost of running the government? Our government is just too big, too bureaucratic, too expensive for a country like ours.
Yeah,
I mean, I was making a point just 2 days ago. The huge loan was approved for
the parliamentarians can say they pay back, don't they?
Yeah, they say they
always pay back the loans.
They pay back at rates that me and you
will never get.
We'll never get.
The issue though is about the size of government.
Yes.
And of course, if an elephant, then it's an elephant size of government.
The current government has reduced it somewhat.
Every government likes to be big. And so not necessarily, I mean, governments always like to do big things, by the way. But I guess, as everyone else has said, the timing is crucial. The impact on the finances are crucial. And we need to watch these things, really. I mean, I think this conversation, I don't know how the government wants to attract for itself some of these publicity, which is not necessarily positive as well. As I've said, there have been a litany of issues. This is the last time you want this conversation. But I guess the blame really should go to the committee that was set up in the first place. They should have asked more questions, and even Parliament, bigger questions. What exactly do we want them to do? By the way, let me just say, we do love our first ladies and our second ladies. All we are asking is, we need to give them specific duties, especially if they're going to
need the taxpayers'
money to pay them. Yeah.
I mean, Kweku, you were the deputy finance minister very briefly. You made the point that we pay the chiefs. I mean,
yes, we do. It was increased quite recently.
Okay.
And I so when I speak, sometimes I sound like this because when you've sat in the Ministry of Finance.
But why are we paying the chiefs?
And queen mothers.
That again it's something that was inherited. When I speak, I am saying that a lot of these practices across government financing. And even though I'm no more at the center of government treasury, I can still feel the fiscal pain that managers there will have to go through and how it gives sleepless nights. And I'm saying that unlike perhaps Franklin, who seemed to be quite sure that maybe it's okay to pay them, but let's assign their roles, I think a lot of the largesse that government does across the economy, and I can from GFA to there are all kinds of payment that we just think that emotionally we are comfortable with it, and therefore we like to make these payments. I think they must all be brought to the table and properly interrogated. And then it won't be a discussion about First Lady. Really come to think of it, that to the First Lady, Second Lady may not be that much, but trust me, if we would pull all those sentimental expenditures by government on the table and have a frank discussion, we may be making real savings that would be used to do some other things for the country.
Listen, that's a fantastic way to end. Coming from just a former deputy minister, and I think I agree with that. Bring everything and let's discuss.
Exactly, especially the Office of Government Machinery's budget.
Very huge.
Keeps rising.
Very, very huge. Frankly, I'm grateful that you joined me.
See
Roxanne, all the best at the Supreme Court.
So, Eva, may I say this?
30 seconds, yes, please.
Yes, the payment to chiefs and queen mothers as defined in the Constitution is anchored in law. You should check the Chieftaincy Act and the regulations.
Okay.
All gazetted chiefs are supposed to take allowances. So that's the law.
Okay.
So if we enact a law that says that thousands of presidents and vice presidents should take some form of allowance,
and you legalize it.
That's legalized.
Okay.
But in any case, we are making the argument as if tomorrow we'll not have a bachelor as a president. Yes.
Good point. I'm grateful, gentlemen. Thank you for your kind, decision to join me. I'm grateful, Franklin. Enjoy the rest of your day.